listening to the Patriot Nation podcast.
Of the Patriot Nation podcast. As always, is your guy Pat Lane here with my man Matt St. Jean. And Matt, we are back, sir. And the Patriots have an initial 53-man roster.
Yeah, feels nice. And a relatively uneventful cut down day. You know, maybe this is setting the tone for what things are going to be like with Elliott Wolf as GM. Maybe we're going to get pretty standard rosters. It's none of these shocking cuts like some of those you got with Bill Belichick. I think there's really only one surprising move. So, uneventful day. Roster goes into the season the way that I think we expect it to. And then, from here are the moving parts as they continue to evaluate the roster and change as the season goes along.
Yeah. No, it's, look, man, that's really what we're looking for, right? Is just some consistency. Right. And hopefully we'll get better. Right. Hopefully we'll get a little better. We'll see what happens. Yeah. Kind of in the process. So, by the way, tomorrow is first day of school for me. Technically yesterday was the first day of school for me. Actually, that's not even true. Last Wednesday was the first day of school for me because I had to go back a little early for the orientation thing I was doing. But tomorrow is the first day of school for me and for a lot of the students in Massachusetts. So good luck to everyone on your first day back. And, another school year is here, but that means that it's football season. And so, that's a good thing. So as hard as it is for the summer to end, it's pretty nice. Pretty nice to be back in football season.
Right now it's August 27th. And in, what's going to feel like a 1 week, it'll be November. This thing, it's going to start to fly by now that we are in football season, and I'm excited for it. It's going to be essentially a game week coming up here for New England. They're going to settle in with the new roster this week, make some moves, and then, we're on to Cincinnati. And,
that's right.
Looking forward to getting back into the football routine. Sundays with some good food, football up on the TV, laying back on the couch. That's what I've been waiting for since last January, February nice. With the Super Bowl. So let's bring it back, baby.
Yep. Now it looks nice. So we're happy about that. Lots of people in the chat today. Matt saying, what's up? How's it going, Matt? Old Man Mob. Respect to Dez. Alec is in the chat. A new face. I haven't seen him. That's good.
What's up, Alec?
Ben Smith in the chat as well. And so we appreciate you guys coming through. Okay, offensively, Alec asked an interesting question, which we'll just kind of like, I like this question. Let's just look at it. Would you cut Tyquan for any of these three? Kadarius Toney, Noah Brown, or Russell Gage?
My short answer to that one is no. There are other players on the team I might cut for one of those players. Correct. I'm not cutting Tyquan for one of those three.
That's right.
We can start to get into the roster. I guess let's start at wide receiver.
Let's do that.
7 players make the Patriots' initial 53-man roster. Kendrick Bourne, not among them. He will start the year on the PUP list, so he will not be back until week 5 at the earliest against Miami at home, the game where Tom Brady will be in town as an announcer. We're talking a lot about the roster battle at the bottom between Jalen Reagor and Kayshon Boutte, presumably for the last spot. Team decided to keep both of them.
Yeah,
which I think is an interesting move there. Coming back to Alex's question, I think that at least Noah Brown is a better player than either Jalen Reagor or Kayshon Boutte. He's an older player, so I don't know if that necessarily makes sense for New England's timeline. Russell Gage, I didn't watch him at all this preseason. So I don't know how he's doing. I know he ended up getting cut. Kadarius Toney is just like a total wild card. First round pick reclamation project. We all know he's electric when the ball's in his hands. Getting it there has been a serious issue. He's higher ceiling than either of the two guys at the bottom of the depth chart right now. not higher floor. I think he's interesting over somebody like Jalen Reagor in that he can also play special teams. So
Right.
if you think that you've maxed out what Jalen Reagor can be, and you're willing to take a chance on somebody who might have untapped potential, who can also play special teams and be active on game days because of that and help you there, I think that could make some sense.
Yeah. Old man mom misses Terrace Marshall, and Marshall's a guy that I know a few people in the SCO Show Slack channel have been, just absolutely pounding the pavement for Terrace Marshall since the day he was drafted. Obviously drafted into a terrible situation in Carolina, just never worked out for him. I don't think it makes sense. But I mean, what the heck? I'd be willing to take a chance on pretty much anyone at this point,
I never liked Terrace Marshall. I didn't think he was good in 2021. I think he's a reason why Carolina's a bad situation. If you given opportunities and has less than 800 career receiving yards, I think, across 3 seasons. He's had the opportunity to be, a key player in the receiving corps because they don't have a lot of good players. They never did anything with it. I would rather keep Kayshon Boutte or Jalen Reagor over guys like that. Reagor he hasn't been good, but he's done some things in this league. Kayshon Boutte is young enough that you can still, at least convince yourself there's untapped potential there, and maybe that can turn into something. Terrace Marshall is just not a type of player I've ever liked. I see the idea in that he's a bigger body outside the numbers receiver in theory. The problem is he just hasn't been very good in that role. I don't think he's an upgrade for you. I think that's just, you're just swapping out one former high draft pick at the bottom of your roster for another, if that's what you're doing. And I don't know if that makes you any better.
Yeah. Look, I don't necessarily disagree with you. So I'm interested in all that. And look, old man mom is Frank Gore Jr. And let's just talk about the running backs real quick. 3 running backs, right? Kevin Harris, a little bit of a surprise cut. I think people thought Harris was going to make the team, especially after his nice touchdown catch, right? But I just don't think that he's that good. I mean, he's fine, but is he better than replacement level? I mean, if he is, he's not much better, right? So,
we saw this happen last year. Got cut last year, landed on the practice squad, right? Still came,
right?
Or was that his rookie year? He's been cut and cut down day at least once before, if not twice.
Yeah, 100%. It's happened both years he's been here. Well, now all 3 years he's been here.
And then he ends up on the practice squad, and I'm sure he's gonna be elevated for games at some point. When people get hurt, he'll probably get signed to the roster. Like he's player 54 or 55 for them, I think. I don't think he's a bad player. I think he's useful when you play him. He's just your regular, just a guy running back in the NFL. And I'm sure they can claim somebody who is roughly as good at any point if needed. So, to me, cutting Kevin Harris over like Kayshon Boutte surprised me because Kevin Harris plays special teams and Boutte doesn't. Harris is kind of a direct backup for Ramondre Stevenson in the power role. So, there's a pretty clear path to Kevin Harris not just being on the roster, but being active on game days and having a role in the game plan and everything that I just didn't see for the depth. You can say the depth at wide receiver. You can make an argument for some of the depth at corner. They have 7 players at each one of those spots. But sometimes you just keep the players that you think are the best. Boutte has performed well in his opportunities this preseason. So I don't think it really matters all that much between those 2 players, which one you keep and which one goes on the practice squad. That's just kind of a technicality.
Right. And I think there's probably, if we're just being honest, I think there's probably a better chance that a running back like Kevin Harris makes it to the practice squad than a wide receiver like Kayshon Boutte. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's probably the thought process there.
Especially since he's made it through,
right,
at this very times. Cut before
at this point. Yeah. Right. So the Frank Gore thing is interesting, though. I mean, if they were looking for a 4th running back and they thought that he was an upgrade over Kevin Harris, he could be a guy. Now, we know that they made a big deal about the waiver wire, right? And so, do you want to waste your waiver wire claim on him? Do you want to go after a few offensive tackles? I know that there were a few guys that got cut that, have been actual starting tackles in the NFL before. Doesn't necessarily mean that any of those guys are going to be any good, right? and old man mom's talking about right now, Caleb Jones and I think it's Jaron, right? Is it Jaron Christian?
Jaron Christian, yeah.
I believe so.
Caleb Jones, I don't think has done. I think he's played one NFL game ever.
Yeah,
for the Packers, he's just big. He's like 6'8", 6'9". He was an undrafted free agent last year. He's a guy who you're just betting on size. Do we want to talk about the offensive line room here?
Yeah, let's do that. Also, just to clean it up, because Cyril Stroke, there are people that are saying the same thing. Very interesting that Tyquan got in. Tyquan Thornton's a starting receiver on this team. A starting receiver.
At least with Kendrick Bourne out right now. Yeah, he has repped with the starters since literally the first day of training camp.
Right.
All the way through the last preseason game. He's going to be a starter. I don't know if he's actually going to be improved. I don't know how much he's going to look better. Obviously, the health will always be a question until he plays a full season.
Right.
And you start to build some confidence there. But they have him in that starting role. He's a young receiver, still just in his third year. They're hoping that he can turn into something there. So I think new offense, he's carved out a role for himself this year. I'm willing to give some benefit of the doubt here, at least until we get 2-3 weeks into the season and start to see what this actually looks like.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we'll see what it turns into. But like, you want to make comparisons to guys down the depth chart too. Like Tyquan is a younger player than someone like a Jalen Reagor with at least in theory more untapped upside. He's a faster player than Kayshon Boutte, who was drafted higher, who had more college production than Boutte did. He's got more traits there. So I think, if you want to compare to the other guys who could be on the roster bubble, it's clear why the team would prefer him. I think at the absolute worst, Thornton is the 5th out of the 7 receivers and probably 6th out of 8 when Bourne is back in terms of overall ability. But yeah, I don't think he's that close to the roster bubble at this point.
I would agree.
Like if they're picking up a receiver, Donovan Peoples-Jones, if they want to go that way, I think it's either Boutte or Reagor who would be the guy 100%. Who's cut, depending on what type of receiver that they are bringing in.
Yeah. All right. Offensive line, you mentioned it. By the way, quarterback, they kept 3. We can RIP Bailey Zappi. I'm sure he'll be on the practice squad. I would be shocked if he's not on the practice squad, because I think the reason that they helped him, the reason that they kept him around this long was to put him on the practice squad. But I might be wrong about that, but that's how I feel.
Well, and I've been saying that I thought he might go somewhere else, but I do notice that it's new coaching staff, and I wonder if he's got a better feel in the building and better relationships with people at this point than he may have had at the end of last season. And obviously he got cut on cutdown day last year and stayed in the building, but I don't think that people loved that. So maybe that things have refreshed. They want to keep him around. It's mutual, and you can keep him in the building. He can be a quality scout team guy, 4th stringer for you. If he leaves and goes to another practice squad, you're going to sign another quarterback who's going to be on your practice squad just to fill that role and run the scout team stuff.
Right.
It's going to be somebody who's about that good, so you might as well try to keep a guy in the building who already knows your system and knows what's going on.
Yeah, agreed. All right, offensive line, they kept 9 offensive linemen. I kind of thought 8, but they did keep an extra one. We'll talk about that extra one and probably why they did it, I think. But Chukwuka for Sidy So, David Andrews, Layden Robinson, Mike Onwenu, Vidarian Lowe, Nick Leverett, Caden Wallace, and then Michael Jordan. Jordan is on this roster, in my opinion, because I don't think Sidy So is going to be healthy for the first week or two. And so Michael Jordan, I believe, at least, made the team because they need more depth at guard. And so I think that this is kind of like a temporary thing where they just say, hey, we need more guys. We just need more bodies. And I think that's why he's there.
And I think it's also because Onwenu they might view in their tackle room right now, or at least as part of their tackle depth.
Right. Yep.
And that means that if you're viewing him with those guys, then you want an extra body on the interior in case, more injuries. Like even if So is good to go, just as kind of an in case. Because right now, you effectively, you got 9 guys, but you can almost go too deep on the depth chart with that fully, with the fact that a couple of those guys can play multiple spots for you.
Yeah. The biggest issue for the Patriots right now and we all saw this on display in Game 3. David Andrews has to be healthy. He has to. They do not have a backup center. Nick Leverett can do it, not well, but he can do it. And there was an interesting, Doug Kyde wrote a piece today about, I think it was Doug Kyde, about how when Cole Strange comes back, that the best thing for him might be to move to center. So I thought was interesting. But anyways, it seems to make sense. They have guards, right? They have guards that you seem to like. City So, Layden Robinson's been playing well, right? Like Onwenu theoretically is a guard, depending on what happens to tackle. So, I think that's one of those interesting things. So we'll see.
I think another interesting note that we got today was that Cole Strange goes on he was on the PUP list to start the season on the PUP list, but we did hear today that the team sounds like they expect him back this season, which is notable because this is an injury that can take a long time to heal from, and it was not out of the realm of possibility for him to be just out for the whole season, trying to recover from this. So with how the line has looked, I will welcome anybody who can come in and play well. And I will say, like, the way that I think the offensive line played on Sunday night after going back through that tape, depending on the level of play you would get from Cole Strange coming back, he might end up in your starting lineup right away, especially if Mike Onwenu is kicked out to tackle for you. City So's really up and down. Layden Robinson, I think, mostly looked awesome, but had 3 very bad plays. He gave 1 really quick pressure and had 2 penalties. So just rookie mistakes there. And he's not the quickest guard, and that shows up at times. But I did think it was notable that, like, Layden Robinson has the best anchor of anyone in their, trio of guys there in the middle. And for those unfamiliar, when I say anchor, that's your ability to just fully stop a defensive lineman in his tracks, put down the anchor, show off your strength. And when he was getting hands on guys, they were not going anywhere. They weren't getting near that quarterback. He was able to move guys in the running game. For a guy who's supposed to be bigger and who's supposed to do that, I don't think we've seen that super consistently from City So. To say I was a little bit Michael Onwenu was not quite up to my standards in that regard as a guard when we saw him earlier this preseason too, which I thought was notable. I know it's not if you were to take out like the penalties, which obviously you can't do, but if you could do that, Layden Robinson may have put the best tape on film of any of the guards in this room. So I think he's played well, and I do wonder, if we're talking about the ideal starting offensive line for this team when everyone is healthy, I have kind of come around on a group that might look like Vidarian Lowe at left tackle, Cole Strange at left guard, David Andrews at center, Layden Robinson at right guard, and Mike Onwenu at right tackle. That might be your best 5 by the end of the season. We'll see what happens, but
it's crazy. But yeah,
well, I've been saying all summer, like City So was good for a rookie last year, but had issues, and I think you're seeing that right now. He was one of the top 20 guards in the NFL according to PFF in run blocking last year, but he was one of the worst in terms of pass blocking. It is funny because I think his pass blocking has gotten better, but his run blocking looks like it's gotten worse. Right. So we'll see how this goes into the season. Obviously, still a young player, plenty of time to grow. A lot of these guys have that. Vidarian Lowe is a young player. There's a lot of young players.
Well, and that's the thing. They got young guys. I mean, and Caden Wallace too. I think, what I think makes sense for right now is, excuse me, is to do what they did in the last preseason game, which is put David Andrews at center, but put Layden Robinson at right guard and put Mike Onwenu at right tackle. Because you can look at it and say, okay, we have So at left guard for now, who's fine. He's fine. I mean, that'd be great, but he's fine. And then we have a quarter 4 at left tackle, Lowe at left tackle, Wallace, whomever it is at left tackle. But the idea is we have less holes to fill, right? Instead of not having Layden Robinson out there, I think you need Layden Robinson out there. I think he's been one of your 5 best offensive linemen, so he needs to be out there. And so, okay, he's out there. Well, to get him out there, you could do one of 2 things. you could look at it and say, well, if City So's out for 2 weeks, we don't love who we have at left guard. That's a mess, right?
Yeah.
That's a mess. And so Layden Robinson then has to go to left guard, and then Onwenu staying at right guard, and then you got to figure out the tackle spots. But I think if you can get away with left guard being where it is, that moving Onwenu to right tackle means you only need a left tackle. Onwenu's a fine right tackle. He's not a great right tackle, but he's a fine right tackle. And so, it is what it is. And I think that, you have to kind of fill in the best that you can. And if that means Caden Wallace ends up at the left or whomever it is ends up on the left side, I think that makes the most sense, right? You're trying to just plug holes is what you're trying to do. And if you get a little bit worse by doing it, then you get a little bit worse doing it.
Yeah. I will say, I also won't be shocked if they keep Layden Robinson out of the starting lineup at first, just because of some of those mistakes. I think that generally speaking, we have seen this coaching staff and front office at this point be willing to play veterans, let young players learn, and let them go in at their own pace. And, if City So is healthy, and Vidarian Lowe is healthy, I wouldn't be shocked if we go back to the line that we saw earlier in camp with Lowe, So, Andrews, Onwenu, and Okorafor to start the year, knowing that they think they have good talent at some young talent at some of the backup spots there, and they are going to let those guys still get acclimated to the NFL a little bit, let them get through some of the mental errors in practice, and then, when you get to week 3 or week 4, if guys aren't playing well, you wait for one of those opportunities and switch things up. So yeah, I could see them taking that approach. The other thing, we talk about waiver claims and additions at offensive line. I look at the way this line came together, and if City So and Vidarian Lowe are both healthy for you by week 1, I'm like, I can see room for additions on the offensive line, but I won't be shocked if they don't make a claim for anybody there, because I think they've been pretty clear that they think they like the talent they have in the room, and they think it needs more time to come together and more work with the coaching staff. It's not 1-to-1, but you look at what happened in Green Bay last year, and that whole offense was rocky at the start, and they just played young guys and had them play through it, and eventually they got better. And maybe New England's approach here was like, hey, we know things aren't great, but we want to invest in the young players we have, let them make mistakes, and see if they come out better on the other side of things. The only exceptions I think I would have to that, Nick Leverett, all the snapping issues. If there's somebody they like out there, even somewhat at center, who is good at snapping the ball, I could see them being claimed or signed and added onto the roster. And, Michael Jordan, I actually thought played well in his limited opportunities with the starting line when he came in. It's only a couple of reps. It was 2 minutes. He's not running or anything like that. But he didn't look like he didn't belong out there. So we'll see. I maybe they like him. He was, I think, the first signing of this.
You might be right, because he was a free sign, correct? Wasn't he?
He wasn't on a roster or anything. So I think they signed him in like February or something like that, or early March before free agency kicked off. So maybe they hold pat for a little bit there and wait to see if more roster churn comes later. Because they clearly have said that they like Okorafor, and Onwenu can play right tackle. Vidarian looks a little bit better, and maybe they just John Christian is interesting.
Yeah.
His PFF grade last year also was barely better than Vidarian Lowe's. So they might look at that and say, these guys are roughly the same. We got a guy who is in the building who we've been working with, who's a younger player, who we want to see what happens. We're not going to pull the trigger on replacing him before week 1. We're going to see what happens, let him make his mistakes, and see how things look by week 8.
Right. And that's ultimately what it comes down to, right? If I'm the Patriots, I'd play the kids as much as I could. Now, again, you can't just play terrible players, right? But I think Layden Robinson showed that he is one of the 5 best linemen there. Onwenu, obviously, is Onwenu. David Andrews, clearly, right?
Yeah.
I think City So is good enough. He's good enough, right? But it just, it is what it is. And I know people in the chat are going nuts about the center position and the guys, Relax. The center position is not more important than the tackle position. That's just stupid.
Well,
That's just dumb.
well,
That's a
it
dumb
might
thing to
be.
say.
Well, it might be if the snaps are this big of an
I mean,
issue because the
if you
tackles
have a
never come
center
into
that if you
play.
have a
But
center that can't snap the ball, well, that's a problem. That's a
yeah,
problem.
that's
But like we're talking about bare minimum, right? Like bare minimum. If your center's fine, like there's a reason why left tackles are the highest paid offensive linemen.
oh
There's a
yeah.
reason left tackles are the third highest paid position in football, right? Like there's a reason why, right? Like that's the thing. So to me, that's one of those things for me where I look at it and just say like, all right, come on, like what are we talking about? Tackle's clearly more important, but again, center, they need to have a guy that can snap the ball. If Dave Andrews gets hurt, which as people pointed out, Dave Andrews is not, he's getting up in age and he's been hurt. If Dave Andrews gets hurt, they're screwed. They're screwed. They're in a lot of trouble.
So the name that I was looking at is Ricky Stromberg. Played for Washington. He was the 98th overall pick last year, and they cut him.
Yep.
Commanders cut a couple guys actually.
He's Arkansas, right? Didn't Stromberg go to Arkansas?
Yeah, he played all over the line. I don't PFF wise, he was like all right in the preseason. I'm not entirely sure why Washington didn't want to keep him, but new coaching staff, new front office, they're new decision makers. It's not the people that drafted him. He can snap the ball, as far as I'm aware. So that's a name that I think catches my eye in terms of waiver claims. Maybe you cut Michael Jordan, place him with Stromberg, make Stromberg your backup center, and move Leverett to guard. And I mean, I do wonder if somebody like Leverett just straight up gets cut too, which is crazy that we're even here. But where Leverett might fall behind Michael Jordan in your depth chart. But if you look at the way that the play has been, he has had some real rough moments.
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to is that you have him because he can be a backup everywhere. He could still be a backup guard, maybe. But at this point, do you feel good about him as a backup center? Because I certainly don't, and I can't imagine the Patriots do either. And so that's certainly an issue. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Look, offensive line is going to be an issue. It's going to be an issue until next year. And honestly, and look, people can sit there and say, "Oh yeah, they can blah, 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 whatever. They'll win 3 games." It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many games this team wins. It really doesn't. Like. Obviously, we want them to win. But, it really doesn't matter how many games they win. What matters is how the young guys play. Can they develop the young players they have on the roster? And can they get better? Right? And that's all we're looking for. And, if that translates to wins, great. Translates to wins. And somebody was talking about, and I forget, was it Tommy Curran? I can't remember. 1993. So for those of you that, it's 30 years ago, which is kind of crazy to think about, but 30 years ago, the Patriots drafted a guy by the name of Drew Bledsoe. Number 1 overall, right? They were terrible. They were 2-14 the year before. They started out that season 1-11. It was a disaster. Like a disaster. They sucked. It was bad. And you know what happened? They won their last 4 games of the season. Bledsoe started to kind of figure things out. You know what I mean? And now all of a sudden you go into the offseason feeling like, okay, we're feeling a little bit better. And you still get the number 4 pick. You draft William McGinnis at number 4 overall. Now all of a sudden you're like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. So it's those things, and 2 years later they're in the Super Bowl. Now, let's pump the brakes on that. But you understand what I'm saying here, that we can look at it and say, you can turn this thing around if you can get good young guys to play well, and you have to have good coaching too, which the Patriots had at the time. But you have to have good young players, let them play, and see if they can figure it out.
Yep, and it's turnarounds happen very fast in the NFL too. We were 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, was when the Detroit Lions came into New England and just got mollywopped by the Patriots.
By Bailey Zappi.
By Bailey Zappi. And then by the end of that season, the Lions start to turn things around. They get that big win in Green Bay to end the season. They play well enough. They end up playing the Chiefs in the opener. They win the division. They go to the NFC Championship game. Like, things turn around very fast. This is the NFL. If you get a quarterback and you get some young talent that starts to play very well, then you can go from worst to first in a single season. That it's not going to be this season for New England, but the goal is to set the foundation so that next season, ideally, you could take that opportunity to start making some moves and start becoming the team you'd want to be around a new core. And you only get there by
100%.
playing the young guys.
Well, it's not just like you're not going to hit on every pick, right? But like you want to know, how does Caden Wallace look? How does Layden Robinson look? Do we need to draft positions? Can we look at the end of the season and say, you know what? Caden Wallace can play right tackle. So we're going to draft a left tackle in the first round because that's what we're going to do because we're not insane and we're not going to ignore this position for any longer like we have for the last 6 years. But we're going to go after a left tackle in the first round. But we feel okay about Caden Wallace at right tackle. And we feel pretty good about, Layden Robinson at guard. And now we're sitting here saying, okay, maybe City So's not quite as good as we thought, but that's okay because we have Layden Robinson to play there at left guard instead. And then we slot our rookie first-round pick into left tackle, and all of a sudden our offense looks okay. We're going to have to go out. Maybe you draft a center in the third round or so, second, third round, whatever the case may be. Think like Creed Humphrey. Creed Humphrey was a second-round pick, I believe, for Kansas City, was he not? And so
sounds right.
I'm pretty sure he was a second-round pick. And so
second or third.
Because I think Humphrey had some injury issues coming out. But nevertheless, either way, right, you get the idea, is that we go after something like that, and you say, okay, let's see if this works, right? And now we feel okay about Caden Wallace. Or we look at it and say, man, Caden Wallace can't play. He's not good. We know he's not good. This isn't working. And so now we need a right tackle and we need a left tackle. So now we're going to go out in free agency and spend on a right tackle and draft. So it's those types of things where it's like, yeah, okay, what do we have, right? You need to know that. And that's really what the Patriots kind of have failed at in the past is like, we looked at it and we said, we're not playing the young guys. So we didn't know how good those guys were, Yeah. And so that to me is a challenge. And so we'll see. And Will Campbell, yes, is the name that a lot of people are throwing out at left tackle. I think it makes a lot of sense. And we'll see, kind of where it goes. But
yeah. I want to touch on two other positions real quick before we go to ad break. We use very fast.
Yep.
One, tight end. Henry and Hooper win new. Bell makes the cut as tight end 3. I think this is one that felt a little 50-50 just because, injury status of the tight ends, Wilcox being a veteran, Bell looking very unpolished so far in his career. And some of his special teams blocking, like obviously he's offensive blocking, but when they put him on special teams and he tries to block, it is rough sometimes.
Yeah.
But keeping a guy in house and trying to develop him, I like that with Bell. And then I just want to go back to quarterback because I finally got to watch back the tape of Drake May, and I watched the tape last night. JT O'Sullivan put out a breakdown of Drake May today that I thought was very good, and I thought reinforced a lot of the same things I was seeing, which is that Drake May makes plays and does some good stuff, and also he's not quite there yet. He definitely has some mental growing to do. I think I'm definitely in the camp of starting Jacoby Brissett week 1 right now.
Yep.
Because I think May is still making enough mental errors and has enough cleanup stuff to do that I want him to get some time watching the professional stuff, watching how everybody else operates before you put him in there. I think he is, just start seeing things too fast at times. Which is normal. He's trying to do a lot at once right now, and I think you want him to master some of that other stuff a little bit more before you put him in. It was just got a couple plays where the accuracy is way off. He had that throw. The Patriots ran all 4 receivers on slants, and he threw the ball. It looked like he was expecting Tyquan Thornton to run a curl, and Thornton ran a slant. Honestly, watching it back, I kind of think that he was trying to throw the slant and just missed that badly, and I'm not really sure how that happens. He had a play where they got really late into the play clock. They snap it with 1 second. Pop Douglas is open but gets hit by a linebacker. May just kind of panics, thinks there's going to be pressure there, and just kind of chucks the ball in his direction, and it's nowhere close. And if he just takes his time. Could have been a 20-yard gain to Pop Douglas if he just dumps it off to him. So I think Drake May has shown a lot. His athleticism is awesome. His arm strength is incredible. He can do all kinds of things for this offense. And when he plays, he's going to raise the floor of the offense in so many ways. I want him to sit and chill for probably 4 more weeks before we put him out on the field for real.
I would agree. And look, I mean, I actually really like the way that Gerard Mayo handled it on Monday morning. And I know people were like, oh, he put his foot in his mouth and he can't keep his straight. And it's like, dude, this is why Belichick never spoke to the media, because like you just can't, like, you can't be honest with the media. You can't.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be honest with the media because they want.
You can't. Yeah.
Right. Like they can't. There's no nuance. Like there's no nuance behind it. The fact of the matter is,
they drive me crazy right now.
It's insane, right? Everyone that has eyeballs, anyone that has eyeballs, can see that Drake May clearly outplayed Jacoby Brissett in the last 2 preseason games. That's not saying anything crazy. We can all see it. Everyone saw it. And so to come here and say, well, Jacoby Brissett's clearly won the. No, he hasn't. He hasn't. You can sit there and say, right now, Drake May is outplaying Jacoby Brissett. That is a fact. Everyone's seen it. Everyone knows. But that's not the only thing to take into consideration. And Bill Belichick said it best on the Pat McAfee show: the preseason games. Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Well,
it's they're vanilla defenses. It's not what you're going to see in a regular game. He's not quite there yet. Not quite there yet.
What bothered me was that after the game, Gerard Mayo was asked about who would back up Brissett. Something happened. And he said Drake May is 100% our second best quarterback in the context of that question. He also said multiple times throughout the press conference that this was kind of his first thoughts, and not to take anything he said too literally, because he hasn't talked to the guys yet, and he hasn't watched the film yet, and he's going to do that on the plane and kind of have more for them the next day. But kind of just initial impressions. And then the next day, after doing all that, he comes out and said that Drake May has outplayed Jacoby Brissett, which in the preseason is 100% true, and saying those two things are not contradictory. So when certain reporters come out and say, well, does Gerard Mayo know how to make up his mind? You are removing all of the context from what has happened here and then being like, wow, isn't this crazy? Like, not when you actually say what happened. And this is where, the media is going to do this. I think Mayo needs to learn how to learn how to say things more neutrally at times, because media is going to spin things and take them out of context, and there's nothing you can do about that. But man, is there a Ben Volin type figure in other teams? Because that is ridiculous to me. And if you go through his Twitter feed from the way he's covered the team this camp, all the dude has done was try to stir up a controversy between Drake May and Joe Milton, trying to stir up a controversy about Gerard Mayo having the players practice when it was hot out, and then try to stir up a controversy about Gerard Mayo saying two things that weren't contradictory hours apart with an evaluative period in between them.
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
That's the, it just is what it is. And unfortunately, Mayo is trying to be transparent with the media, which just unfortunately in New England, I don't know if that's going to work, but we'll see. As far as Zappe is concerned, I never got it. I never understood it. He's fine. He's okay. But he's not really people are like, I was going back and forth with a buddy of mine who was talking about, I don't know why Milton made the team over Zappe. And it's like, what? What are you even talking about? And he's like, well, Zappe's a better quarterback than Joe Milton right now. And it's like, yeah, we all know that. Everyone knows that. But it doesn't matter. You're not trying to win anything right now. So you don't care if Zappy's in there and he can run the offense, and be okay. If you're in San Francisco and Bailey Zappi is, you're choosing between Bailey Zappi and Joe Milton, sure, I'll choose Bailey Zappi because it's San Francisco. We're trying to win a Super Bowl, right? And if God forbid, if something happens to our starting quarterback, we can stick him in, and he's not going to be great, but he's going to be okay. He can kind of run the offense, but he doesn't have the ceiling. He's basically at his ceiling right now. Milton might not get there. He's got like a 2% chance of being the guy. But if he ever is the guy, he's going to be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, right? And I don't think he's ever going to get there, but there's at least a chance, right? And so you take that chance, you see if you can develop him the same time you develop in May, and you see what happens. And that's one of those things for me where I just look at it and think, like, that's why Joe Milton's on the team right now. Bailey Zappi's not. And Bailey Zappi, I think should be on the practice squad. I think that makes a lot of sense to put him on the practice squad, but but we'll see.
Yeah. Yep.
So
you said everything I had.
anyways, all right, let's take a break and we'll come back. We're going to do defense and then we'll hit special teams as well. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. That means you can turn $10 into $1,000. Now, one Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on Prize Picks every week in September. That's right. Only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free wins. Don't miss this deal on Prize Picks because it's gone when September ends. Now, for me, I'm kind of going for that full year projections there. So I'm going Patrick Mahomes for more than 4,300 passing yards and for Aaron Rodgers for less than 3,750 passing yards because it's the Jets. They're going to screw up somehow. So download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right. So defensively, not a ton of surprises here, although I am happy about a few different players that made it. Defensive line, I guess we can start at. Like it's not really anything. It's not really anything super surprising. Defensive line, Godshaw, Farms, Uquale, Tristan Hill, Keon White, and Dietrich Wise. I think Tristan Hill was a guy that was definitely on the roster bubble. We weren't sure if it was going to be Armon Watts, who came from Pittsburgh. We weren't sure if it was going to be Sam Roberts, who was here the last few years. But Tristan Hill is the guy, plays with a mean streak for sure. Yeah. Decent player. Not great, but a decent player. And so I think, that's fine. Uquale has been really, really solid for them the last few years as like a sub-pass rusher. And I thought Jeremy Farms really kind of showed out this training camp and preseason. And so he's a guy I think that could try to step in a little bit now that Christian Barmore, who, by the way, Barmore put on the IR, but with a designation to come back, which is interesting because, you only get 4 of those spots. And so the fact that he
2.
Right. You only get 2 of those spots. Thank you. You only get 2 of those spots. Now, you only get 2 of those spots at a time, yes?
Well, no, you get at cut downs. You can only designate 2. So, by the way, I think when we had talked about Jake Andrews before, we had said he was eligible to return, and I don't think that's the case.
He's not.
No. Because you have to be placed on IR. It's like a special designation at cut down. Put on injured reserve designated to return. You go
yeah, he was cut down earlier, and so he's done for the year. Yep.
Yeah, and with his injury, he would have been done for the year anyway.
Right.
But yeah, Barmore being designated to return, and Mapu being designated to return
Correct.
both of those guys. Hopefully that's good news for Barmore. Maybe it's just that these are the only two players who were hurt, so you might as well designate him to return because otherwise he is done for the year no matter what. But if Barmore can give you something this year, that's awesome. And Farms is a guy, they cut Lawrence Guy and kind of a we're going to get younger move, betting that one of these players would step up to fill in for what Guy had done last year. And Farms seems poised to step into that role. When they take the field in Cincinnati, don't be surprised if Jeremiah Farms ends up being a starter. It's going to be either him or Aquala next to Godshaw when they put two defensive tackles in there. And we've seen them like to put three defensive tackles in there at points. So you might see all three of those guys when their first snap of the year.
Yeah, agreed. So not super surprising. I thought I liked what they did. I think it makes sense the way they did it, and then we'll kind of go from there. So, all right. So, and then let's go to linebacker. So I'm just going to combine outside and inside linebacker. It's just easier that way. Mm-hmm. So we have Juwan Bentley, Jelani Tavai, Raekwon McMillan, Christian Ellis. Those are your four inside linebackers. And then Anthony Jennings, O'Shane Zimenez, and Joshua Uche are your primarily outside linebackers. And so I thought McMillan and Ellis really played their way onto the team. McMillan's a guy that I think was going to make the team basically no matter what. But what we saw from him was like, okay, this guy can actually play, right? Like he's been on the roster, he's been hurt, but like he can actually play. And Christian Ellis, I thought, played his way onto this roster. I was very skeptical about him, but I think he really's done a nice job. So again, he's a guy that plays special teams. And so and Mayo has said, I want guys that play special teams, but I don't want guys that just play special teams. Now, Brennan Schooler might be, he's lined up at safety a little bit. I don't know if he'll ever see safety in an actual game, but he's like the one guy that's just a special teams player. Everyone else is like doing something as well as playing special teams.
Yeah, I thought Christian Ellis and Joe Giles Harris both played really well in the preseason finale, and we saw Ellis go down with a head injury and leave that game early. So in my projection, I gave the spot to Giles Harris between the two of them, just because of health. But it seems like Ellis must be good enough to go right now because I thought he played well. I expect Giles Harris back in the building. And Sion Takitaki is on the PUP list. He is eligible to come back in week 5. And then, Marty Mapu listed as a safety, but he'll play some linebacker, I assume, as well. Or at least he'll be in the box with these guys. So, I mean, they really have so many good players at these positions. It's impressive. It's a very good group. I think they could use a little bit more juice off the edge with pass rushing, but I think, that's unlikely to come this year. They're just going to have to live with scheming up pressures for the most part this year. And it's even without Barmore, this front seven is going to be one of the tougher ones to run against in all of football once again. And they're going to make sure of it. They're going to make they're going to make it hard to run. They're going to make it physical. And then when you drop back to pass, they're going to try to confuse you, turn that into turnovers, and try to win games that way. And, I think they got the personnel to do that. It should still be a top 10 defense in my eyes.
Well, and that's honestly the way I feel about it for me is, and you can throw in some of the safeties who come down into the box and help against the run. If you can stop the run and you can stifle a team's running game, and now you make them one-dimensional, right? That matters. That matters. Now you might look at their corner room and say, the corners are fine, and we'll get to the corners. The secondary is fine. It's not great, but it's fine. But like for me personally, at least for me, I look at it and say, if you can stop the run, then we can talk about getting after the quarterback. Now, whether that means stunts, whether that means blitzes, whatever that means. But if you feel okay about stopping the run, then you don't have to worry about, okay, now we have to do a game, we have to do this, we have to do that. Because it's like, all right, we forced them into this long passing play because they tried to run on first down and picked up nothing. Now it's 2nd and 8. But now they got to throw it because they know they can't run for 5 yards on us, so they got to throw it, right? So we can come with a disguised blitz and mix up our coverage, whatever the case may be. And so you could do all those different things. And I think you can be a little bit more creative with getting pressure if you don't have to worry about stopping the run so much because they're in that second or third and long.
Do we want to talk about the secondary and the corner room? Because I think that's probably the most interesting part of this defense. You want to read through?
Absolutely, let's do it.
Should we start with the corners? Who made it?
Yeah. We'll do corners and then I'll add the safeties in at the end if you want. We could just do that. So at corner you get Christian Gonzalez, Jonathan Jones, Marcus Jones, and then Marco Wilson, Alex Austin, Isaiah Bolden, and Marcellus Dial. It's interesting. At the bottom there is interesting. And then at safety, you have Kyle Duggar, Jabril Peppers, Jalen Hawkins, Brandon Schooler, and Del Pettis, which we're happy about. Del Pettis, we're happy about that. Specialty, that man worked. You talking about work your way onto the team. That man worked his way onto the team. And that's awesome. And I'm happy for him. And the corner room is interesting because I just feel like, look, none of those guys are superstars. Marco Wilson, Alex Austin, Isaiah Bolden, and Marcellus Dial. None of those four are superstars, but I do think that they have potential. I think Marco Wilson plays extremely physical in the run game. He's not a huge guy, but he plays very physical in the run game. Bolden is a big dude who runs really fast. He doesn't quite have the technique down yet, but I do think, he was hurt all year last year, and you got to remember too. So, I do think with a full year of seasoning that he can maybe develop into something. And so I don't. And Marcellus Dial the same way. Dial plays a ton of special teams, does a lot of things right, physical in the run game. Those are the things for me that I look at and think the bottom of this cornerback depth might not be great, but I feel like, and again, Alex Austin's a guy, and we've talked about Alex Austin a few times on the show. I feel like he showed that he can play in the NFL. Now, whether that's 100% or not, but I feel like he can play in the NFL. A lot of penalties in secondary last week, but there was 4 on Azizi Hearn. There was 1 or 2 on Mikey Victor. None of these guys really had. I mean, a few of them, of course, you take penalties. Marcellus Dial had a few penalties against him, but that's for me. That's the way I look at it. I think that there's a lot of potential at the bottom of the roster.
Yeah, and I think you have kind of a clear 3 tiers in your corner room. With your top 3, Gonzo and the Joneses. Those are going to be your guys that start, assuming that they are healthy. I think that should be a good group. Obviously, we haven't seen much of Marcus Jones this summer, but hopefully he can come in and live up to some of that draft hype and turn into a good starting, I think, slot corners where they're going to start him. Get to that second group where I think it's Alex Austin and Marco Wilson, and maybe Isaiah Bolden's in this group too. And I think the physicality stands out here, and I think this is a general thing. Year 1 of Elliott Wolf, what stands out about this team? They're physical. They hit a whole defense does. There's a nasty streak there. I don't know if there's necessarily a nasty streak on the offense, but there is on the defense. This is the way that they want to play. Marco Wilson will come up and tackle. Alex Austin, we've seen what he can do. Isaiah Bolden, they've lined him up at a bunch of different spots. He plays special teams. He's big. He's physical. He's going to play that Patriots brand of football. We're going to see how many opportunities he actually gets during the season to actually be active on game day and play. But I had no issues with the coverage of any of these guys in preseason. Then Marcellus Dial, I think this last roster spot kind of came down to Marcellus Dial versus Sean Wade versus, do we want to keep somebody at a different position? And Dial's played pretty well on special teams, and I think that was kind of your difference maker. He's younger. He's got traits. He's a good special teamer. Sean Wade's not a bad player. I think he's very smart. I think he knows this defense well at this point. He's just the older guy there, so he kind of gets the short straw. Hopefully he can stick around the practice squad and, can continue to be a good veteran in the room for them and a depth presence for them. If they get to if cornerback 8 is seeing the field for them this year, that's going to be a concern. But if it does come to that he can be the guy for them. But they're just so deep here. They got literally just so many bodies. That's 7 corners.
It's a lot.
And I think you look at the roster construction, it's 14 players between cornerback and wide receiver. I'm not sure if we ever saw Bill Belichick keep that many players between
No
those two
way.
spots.
No
And
way.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that like Jalen Rager is going to be a special teamer for you. Pop Douglas does some special teams. I think it's mostly a backup. They've been training Javon Baker on kickoff returns, kickoff coverage, punt coverage as a gunner all preseason. They want him to be good enough on special teams that he'll be active on game day and he'll have opportunities to actually play and grow. So they're getting him ready to go there. And then they use their corners like crazy on the new kickoffs. They play very important roles. I think they typically put 4 of them on the field, 3 or 4 of them on the field. So, that's a big spot for your defense, and that's where Marcellus Dial and Isaiah Bolden are really going to get some opportunities to shine here. So, there's opportunities to play for all of these guys, and if you feel good about Christian Gonzalez and Marcus Jones by the end of this year as starters going forward, and a couple of these young guys prove that they can be NFL caliber depth pieces, then that puts you in a really good position. And, if this turns into a great secondary and guys develop, awesome. You might have a young secondary for the future and you can develop. If they're only good, that's okay, because finding, a corner 2 or a corner 3 to complement Christian Gonzalez in free agency, that's very doable. Whether it's a trade market or free agency, you can do that. So, I like the way they handled this group, and we'll see how they look, by the time we hit the midpoint of the season.
Well, and that's right. And that's what it comes down to, right? How do these guys develop? And that becomes the biggest question. But I like Mike Pellegrino there. I think he's done a really nice job with the corners. I think we've seen some good development from them. The other thing about the corner spot is that Bolden and Marcus Jones have both worked at safety at times too. And so they can kind of do some of that work as well. So, and I also think, you mentioned, Belichick not keeping or hanging on to 7 wide receivers and 7 corners. I do think they've talked about being active on the waiver wire. And I do think that the waiver wire is going to be a spot where you could see a guy drop off, right? You could see a Kayshon Boutte get cut. You could see a Marcellus Dial get cut. You could see, depending on who's there. So they say, hey, we're going to keep these guys now. There might be a guy that gets cut that we like better, right?
Yeah.
And so, and so I think that's going to be the first place that they pull from. There's not really anywhere else to pull from. You're not taking a quarterback. You're certainly not taking a running back. You're not taking a tight end. Maybe you're taking an offensive lineman, maybe. But, you're not taking a D lineman, I guess.
Yeah, I think
linebacker, you know what I mean?
I think you could see defense. Pat Stats mentioned it in the chat. I have it in my article. It's dropping tomorrow. KJ Henry, the guy who absolutely lit up Jacoby Brissett for that hit.
Right.
The Commanders caught him. He generated 10 pressures in the preseason for the Commanders.
What I meant was that you're not gonna. You might replace him with a defensive lineman, but you're not picking up someone and dropping. You understand what I mean?
Well, I will say I could see them cutting somebody like a Tristan Hill for a different defensive tackle.
Right. But what I'm talking about is picking up someone from a different position, right? So if you're picking up someone from a different position, you're picking up another offensive lineman, which I guess you theoretically cut Michael Jordan or whatever the case may be, right? But if you're picking up a running back, let's just say the Patriots love Frank Gore Jr. and they're we think Frank Gore Jr. is going to be the best thing since sliced bread. We want Frank Gore Jr. If they're going to put a claim in on him, they're not dropping Tristan Hill to pick up him.
No,
they're just not doing that, right?
Yeah, I think.
To me, it comes from the receiver core or the corners. That is where there's extra where you can trim off if you have to. Maybe offensive line, but I just feel like that's kind of the spot where you can pull someone from, depending on who you're picking up.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree there. I didn't mention him, but just to get my word in on Del Pettis, huge props to him for making this team. Grew big time again. A guy who plays special teams. You're a young player. You want to make the roster. There's a pretty big theme here. Make an impact in special teams. It makes you harder to cut. I think he's been very good there.
Personal protective for Bryce Behringer. Come on now.
Yeah,
it's important.
Around the ball. Yeah, he's super solid in that role.
Yeah.
And very curious. I don't know if he's even going to be active on game days when we start the year. Somebody's got to be inactive, and he might be some like between him, Bolden, and Marcellus Style, they all play special teams, but I don't think all three are going to be active on Sunday. It's just not enough spots to go around.
Yeah.
But, Pettis versus Mapu, when Mapu gets healthy, whenever that is, will be a very interesting situation to watch. Who they decide to keep there and how the snaps get allocated.
Yeah.
And Mapu
Agreed.
on IR, so he can't come back before week 4. So week 5 is your target date. I think Taki, Boer, and Mapu, probably all guys that we think might be back then, maybe. And Strange and Barmore are probably your longer term guys to watch, later in the season to see when or if they make an appearance for New England.
Right. Yeah, I agree. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. All right, let's do. We got just one more ad that we need to read here, which I'm going to do live because I didn't. We didn't record this. So, but this is for game time. Okay, so it's college football season, right? Football, NFL season, of course, is starting, but college football season as well is starting. And I'm excited to go, as I told you, Matt, and as I told the show, I'm going to Notre Dame this year. Super exciting that I'm going to Notre Dame. I'm very excited about it. And the atmosphere really is what I'm excited about. And so one of the things for me that Game Time has is they have Game Time picks, which they actually pick out the best deals for you on seats, which is really nice. And so I was able to go through, pick out the nice deal for a seat. Now, sometimes those are more expensive. These were expensive tickets. So we went with just kind of the cheapest of the tickets. But the nice thing about Game Time as well is they have the all-in pricing. So, when you're looking at the prices compared to other sites, you're like, well, why is this one so much more expensive than that one? And it's because they include all their fees and stuff up front. So you're not looking at it saying, oh, it's this price, and then you click on it and it's actually $60 more than that price. And so that's one of those things that I really like about it. So anyway, so that's what you got to do. Also, they do provide a view from every seat, which is nice. A lot of, it's one of those like really nice things. You can click on it and you literally see the view as you like when you click on the ticket, bam, there's the view right in front of you. So that's really nice. So they also have the lowest price guaranteed. So they will credit you up to 100%, 100% of the difference, 110%, I'm sorry, of the difference as well. So what you're going to do is you're going to download the Game Time app. You're going to create an account, and you're going to use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. What a great freaking tagline, dude. That's a new one. New tagline. Great one.
I love it.
So, anyways, specialists. Chad
Joey Sly, baby.
Chad Ryland. Thank you, Chad Ryland. Thank you. Thank you so much for being good just for one night. Just one night. It was a Christmas miracle, and you gave us Drake May instead of Jaden Daniels. I'm sure Jaden Daniels is going to be fine. I don't think he's going to be fine, but maybe Jaden Daniels will be fine. Washington seems to love him. Good for them. For me, I wanted May all along. I think that the Patriots may have gone with Daniels if they had the number 2 pick. But they didn't. They had the number 3 pick. And so I'm happy about Chad Ryland sucking for them last year. And Joey Sly clearly was the pick here. Of course, he went over 2 in the final preseason game. But one was from 64, the other one was from 61. And by the way, he had the length on both of those. So,
I wish that they let Chad Ryland try one of those, just because that's
what I didn't understand.
They were just alternating kickers. So hopefully we see Chad Ryland land back on the practice squad. I think he showed improvement this year, and if that continues, maybe he can establish himself as your long-term kicker. But taking him at 112,
just
really rough.
And again, this is the thing. Well, and here's the other part of it, right? This is the biggest thing. San Fran, and what people say Well, San Fran traded up to 99. They traded up for a kicker, right? Like, come on. They traded up to 99 at the end of the second round, the end of the third round. Blah, blah, blah. Also, that's true. San Francisco, but San Francisco was looking at saying, we don't have a kicker. We need one of those because we're going to be like competing in the playoffs. The Patriots stunk, right? They needed like 9 positions. And they passed on a lot of those positions, on all of those positions, to take the kicker in the 4th round. And that, to me, is just inexcusable. You could have taken a tackle. You could have taken a guard. You could have taken anyone at that spot.
The hit rate on special teamers is so the hit rate on punters is fine, but the hit rate on kickers is so low that taking one that high is always a risky endeavor.
Right.
And it's the type of thing that if it works, you're going to be set at that position for a while, and that's nice. But how much of a competitive advantage do you really get over the average team? And if you miss at it, especially this high in the draft, that can be catastrophic. And I wasn't a DeJuan Jones fan, but we took Chad Ryland with DeJuan Jones on the board. And even if you said we don't like Jones, but it's a position of need, so we'll just throw a pick there anyway, and maybe it works out. Team's in much better shape right now.
Right.
None of this is about Chad himself. I hope he figures things out. He's a very talented player. Seems to be liked in the locker room. If he figures it out, that's awesome. If he becomes a great kicker, that'd be fantastic for us. And I'm 100% rooting for that continued development. But the process of making that pick, I don't think was sound, even if Ryland turns into a good kicker. He basically panic picked a kicker, panic traded up in the draft for a kicker. And that is not a position. And how often have we talked in here about how we saw Bill Belichick create needs on the roster and then make ill-advised moves in the draft to address them? It happened with Cole Strange. It happened to kick with Chad Ryland. Happened to wide receiver with Tyquan Thornton, reaching on him. And
I mean, it's you can go all the way back to Rohrwasser. Like to miss on 2 kickers, one in the 4th and one in the 5th, is just like, what are we doing, man? What are we doing? Like, that's a situation where you have to look at that and you have to say, we'll get a guy. We'll figure it out. We'll draft a guy in the 7th round. We'll do what the Cowboys did and bring in Brandon Aubrey, right? Like, I don't know, something. But like you can't waste a mid-round pick on a kicker when your team stinks. You just can't do that because there are guys like Joey Sly sitting around. They're just sitting around. And you can just bring them in and they can be fine. Is Joey Sly going to be the best kicker in the NFL? No. Is he going to lose a game for you this year? It's possible. I don't know if he will or not, but he might. But who cares? The team stinks. It doesn't matter. You can't waste a pick on a kicker.
Well, and it's, even if you want to draft a kicker, like I get it.
Right.
Doing the 6th or 7th round, you have to stick to your board. And it was very clear the way that draft went that they wanted Jake Moody. San Francisco moved up to go get him. And they said, well, we need a kicker. We're just going to go trade up and get the next guy so we don't miss on him. And that's just not the right mentality to handle that stuff,
Right.
Because that's, like I've said before, if you are drafting for need and you're reaching, you're putting yourself in a bad position.
Disastrous.
To not get a player of quality at a position of need that you're admitting is a position of need and not take the opportunity to address other positions either. You can make yourself worse at 2 positions at the same time, essentially, which New England may have done with that pick, which is really tough. So, really poor thought process there. And, this is where we are. And, meanwhile, you look at the 49ers, Jake Moody, I think, was in he made the team, but I believe was in a roster battle this year. He hasn't been exceptional for them.
Yeah, he's been fine, but
and it's a 49ers team that has issues with depth. They don't have great depth on the offensive line. They don't have great depth at cornerback. I bet, they'd probably be better off if they signed to Joey Sly and drafted, a guard or a corner with that pick with 99 than trading up for Jake Moody. Like even when it works, I don't think it's still really a win for you.
I agree. I totally agree. Right. And that's the hard part when you look at it and just say, like, man, they just, yeah. I don't understand. Now, Jawan Jones, in fairness, Jawan Jones went 111. So he did go the pick before Chad Ryland.
Okay.
But you did take Jake Andrews before him.
Oh, yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
Which is insane to me. That still blows my mind that they did that. You know, and these are some of the things that you look at and you're just like, why are you doing these things, right? And again, center is an important position. I'm not saying center's not an important position. You have a starting center. You have one, right? Like, he's here still. He's your best offensive lineman, probably. Maybe not. Maybe on Wenu is, but like, he's a very good player. You don't have a starting tackle. Right. So it's those things where it's like, yeah, we need that position. That's an important position. We have a guy there already. Draft someone else. Right. Take a shot at someone. And again, so the Patriots traded pick 120. At 120, the Jets took Carter Warren out of Pittsburgh.
I don't even remember who that is.
He's a tackle. Is he any good? The answer to that question is no. He's not. He did start 5 games with them last year. But he's not that good. He's just not. And that's okay. But like, he played a little bit last year. And then, of course, the Jets were like in dire need of offensive tackle. So he's not a good player. But he's at least another body you could throw out there. You just never know, right? For me personally, I just think it's insane to do what they've done the last few years. And so at least we're not in the Belichick era anymore. I wrote the whole article on Pat's Pulpit talking about the last 5 years and what it's done to the roster construction, right? And unfortunately, this is where we're at. This is where we're at. Yeah. But I just, you know, it is what it is. So we closed the door on the Chad Ryland era. And Joey Slye, again, is Joey Slye a great kicker? No. If the Patriots were making a deep playoff run, would I want Joey Slye to be the kicker? Probably not. But like, he's fine. So why is the kicker? So what? He's fine. You know, like, whatever. He missed a few kicks. Whatever. I don't care. Right? So Bryce Behringer, weapon, and then of course Joe Cardona, who's been on the team forever. So listen, in 2006, the Patriots drafted Stephen Gostkowski in the 4th round. I think it was like pick 116. It was like right after when they drafted Chad Ryland. You were a really good team. You had just lost Adam Vinatieri, the greatest kicker of all time. I don't care. The greatest kicker of all time. And you bring in Stephen Gostkowski. It was a 4th round pick. Was it a little early for a kicker? Yes. He played 14 seasons. They won 3 Super Bowls, right? Now, he missed some extra points, right? Like, he missed some big kicks, right? They almost lost the Super Bowl. Well, I'm 20-3. So like, but whatever. He missed an extra point in that game. They didn't make the Super Bowl the year before because he missed an extra point in Denver. And so some of those things where you're like, all right, he missed some kicks, but kickers miss kicks. It is what it is. That was a great pick. But again, if you had missed on him, it would have been a terrible pick. But you needed it. And like, people had heard of Stephen Gostkowski. He was an actual kicker. He wasn't just some random dude off the street that you're like, oh, I've never heard of this guy. You looked at, like, the biggest issue for me was when you looked at the consensus kicker ratings. Justin Rohrwasser didn't exist. He wasn't even on there. No one knew. They didn't even have film. They were in the draft room. They got thousands of guys queued up. Not one, nothing. And Chad Ryland, they were like, no, don't know who he is either. It was just like, what are we doing, dude? You're taking kickers, and you're taking kickers that are off the board. They don't even exist. No one even knows who they are. You could have just picked them up as street free agents. It doesn't matter. And and you're drafting them in, the 4th and 5th round. So anyways, we've spent far too long talking about the kicker situation, but
yes,
that's where we're at. So I apologize for ranting about that. It's just so frustrating. Anyways, and then Behringer and Cardona, as I said, Behringer, weapon, we're happy about that. So that's it. That's the squad. I know you said that you were working on. By the way, my friend is like, kickers are stupid and they should be banned from the NFL. He's like, we don't even do extra. He's a basketball fan, but he's like, don't even do extra points. I don't care. They're dumb. Like they're dumb. You got some guy. The teams fight for 60 minutes, right? And the game is decided by some guy that doesn't even play football. He doesn't even play football.
That's what I love about this sport.
It's crazy. It's insane. Imagine if basketball game was like, they just pulled some dude off the street and they're like, all right, you're going to shoot 3 free throws to win the game. Like, what? What do you mean? Can this guy play? No, he can't. Well, but can he like compete with it? No, he can't do that.
Well, you say they can't play all until Adam Vinatieri tackles Herschel Walker.
Fair. Yeah, fair. That's a good point. But really, it's like, all right, this dude's like 5'5", right? And he's just a free throw specialist. All he does is just shoot free throws. Okay. All right. Go up and shoot 3 free throws at the end of the game to win the game or lose the game. Who knows? Right. And it's like, can that guy actually play on the field? No, we can't put him out there. But just for this, it's like, it's silly, So anyways, it's kind of funny. All right, that's it. Yeah, you said you're working on a Pat's Pulpit article about potential
some waiver wire free agent names will be on Pat's Pulpit tomorrow. It's not exhaustive, but just some names that I personally thought were interesting. I don't actually expect the team to be that active with making claims. I was underwhelmed by some of the names available, and I think there was a little bit of an emphasis on trying to develop guys you have in-house. So, like, I'm not going to claim a corner. Like, it's going to be depth offensive linemen, and maybe there's a receiver out there they like better than Rager or Booty, and they want to make a move. Maybe, like, a depth tight end or running back if there's someone that they happen to like. Like, Cameron Latu got cut, and maybe they want to take a flyer there. But, that's going to be your tight end 4. So, I don't think we see real crazy movement for New England. Definitely not more than like 2 players being added.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Would you? How do you feel about Frank Gore Jr.?
I have not watched him at all, to be honest. But I like Kevin Harris. I'm partial to Kevin Harris.
Yeah.
If there's a veteran name there, Samaje Perine got cut in Denver, and he's been just a super solid backup running back for a while. So if they want a veteran to replace Kevin Harris, that's a name. Demetric Felton didn't make the cut in Indy. He's on waivers. They looked into him before. Didn't sign him, but maybe they're interested now. I don't really expect them to make that move, but they've been tied to him recently. So, that's in there. But
yeah,
it's nose tackle to me. Like Marquand McCall is interesting because he had a decent preseason. He's a nose tackle. And like the Commanders guys, backup field center, the Commanders, the Razorback, whose name is escaping me, and KJ Henry, their defensive end. Both guys drafted last year. Ricky Stromberg's the center.
Stromberg.
Yeah.
So, Lindstrom. Was it Lindstrom that went to BC? He got cut too, right?
Alec Lindstrom.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't. I took a look at his PFF grades, and they were not good. He got cut. I don't know where he's going to end up, but he did not. Like, he looks like a practice squad type guy, which I think there are a lot of names that were cut today that are interesting as practice squad types. I think there are less so that are interesting as the waivers type pickups because you got to replace one of your own players with some of them. And I think most of the options out there are going to be lateral moves for a team that seems to be just trying to build from within. So I don't know why you're swapping out for an equally talented player from outside the building at this point.
Yeah, fair.
In the process. Week 5, sure, I get that. If you want to sign somebody off somebody else's practice squad and cut someone you're unhappy with their progression. 4 games been played before week 1. I don't think any of these positions have been so totally absent of hope to the point where you're going to be picking up scraps.
Well, and that's
then at least trying to start guys.
Right. That's the other part of it is that any of these guys got cut. I mean, obviously they can get claimed by someone, but if they don't get claimed, they're going to end up on the practice squad. And if you want, you could just sign that guy to your active roster, right? So if you're feeling like, we don't really need that right now, I think that's fine. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. All right. That's all we got. So thanks for coming through, guys. We appreciate it. We're going to be live Thursday night, I think, with a fantasy football special. That's the plan. I'm going to roll with it. So we'll see. we'll see. I'm waiting on someone to confirm, but I'm hoping that everyone's in for Thursday night, and we'll go from there. So, anyways, thanks for tuning in, guys. We appreciate it. Chat, as always, blowing up. Don't agree with some of the stuff you guys say, but that's okay. It is what it is. We can disagree and still get along. It's not politics. You know what I mean? So, anyways, so we'll talk to you guys soon, and we'll see you on Thursday night.